On today's episode of the Locked On NHL podcast, the Tampa Bay Lightning trying to prove that lightning can strike more than twice.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. We are your first listen each and every day. We are also your team each and every day. And we thank you for making Locked On NHL part of your daily listening plans. Locked On NHL coming your way today with a look at three teams that are flying a little under the radar this offseason. Been kind of a quiet, in some instances, offseason, but we're going to take a look at the Red Wings, the Lightning, and the Devils today and just look at where things stand and whether we think that they have a chance to get to the playoffs, whether it's just a matter of finally needing to push back against Big Brother in some cases, and whether the Yzer plan is on schedule. We'll talk about all that here on today's show. My name is Seth Toupal, host of Locked On Wild, joined by JD Young of Locked On Sharks. And JD, we are getting closer to the start of camp. We're about this time 2 months from now. We will either have the post or the preseason started, or teams will be in training camp. So 2 months, and hockey is here. So it makes sense to just kind of keep chugging along and keep looking at some of these teams. And let's start with the Detroit Red Wings here today. A Detroit team that had a very weird season last year. They got off to the terrible start. They fire Derek Lalonde. They bring in Todd McClellan. They do pretty good to start with him, and then they end up kind of fizzling down the stretch. So they end up missing the playoffs. They go 39, 35, and 8. And you look at what the Red Wings have done this offseason. They bring Patrick Kane back. That was it took a little while for that to happen, but it seemed like there wasn't, I don't know if there was a ton of concern. It just was something that took a little while for Kane to kind of make his choice. The big move, obviously, was bringing John Gibson in to fill in the net position. So what do we think, JD, of this? What do we think of this Red Wings team, where they're at, what they've done? What do you feel like is kind of the expectations for this Detroit team in 2025, 2026?
Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting team because it feels like a team that's been trying to make a big splash for years and just never been able to pull it off. And I don't know if you want to count the John Gibson trading as a big splash. I don't really either, especially where John Gibson is at right now. And I do think Gibson's going to improve the goaltending when he's healthy. And that's always been the question with John Gibson, is when he's healthy, that he has been a very good goaltender. And I think we're going to see a much better John Gibson now that he potentially has something to play for. But it's just kind of funny where you look at the Ducks, where it's like they're going to be kind of right on the heels of where the Red Wings are at here, probably as soon as this year. And John Gibson been waiting forever to play meaningful hockey games again. But I am very curious about the goaltending, because you do have John Gibson, who, again, not the healthiest guy. Cam Talbot, who might be 115 at this point. And then it gets, you're going to be counting on some potential younger players. Sebastian Cossa is probably going to be pushing here to try to make the NHL at some point. The goaltending, I think, is one of the big questions for this team. And if they can get above average goaltending, you feel like they have a lot of the other pieces in place, right? They have a young core that's really kind of coming together, especially among the forwards. Lucas Raymond continues to take big steps. Alex DeBrincat kind of in the prime of, and same thing with Dylan Larkin, both two guys kind of in the prime of their career. They went out and they signed Mason Appleton, I think, to help kind of shore up that middle six for them. James Riemsdyk, an older player, but can still provide some pop. And then you're going to hope that guys like Marco Kasper and Axel Sandin Pellikka and some of these other guys can start to infiltrate into the system and be everyday NHL contributors for you. And I think this is a team that whether they like it or not, they have built through the draft here. And I know Steve Yzerman, definitely wants to build through the draft. And like I said earlier, it feels like a team that tried to make multiple swings for big time stars or big time players and just kept missing on them. And maybe this is a year where everything comes together for the full season, because it feels like that's what with the Red Wings, right? It's always been like 75, 80% of a season where it feels like they're going to be a playoff team and then things fizzle out. And maybe this is the year where they finally get over the hump and they finally break through.
Yeah, and like you look at what they have. I mean, Dylan Larkin is obviously a great piece. Lucas Raymond is a very good player too. Alex DeBrincat had a great season this past year. He's a very good player. Patrick Kane has shown a nice resurgence since returning to the NHL and playing with Detroit. So you've got guys in the top six that are certainly very capable, but you just have a lot of guys that are definitely like supporting pieces. Yeah. And I like 100% what you said. It feels like they were trying to make some big swings this offseason and they just couldn't land the connecting blow to
not just this offseason. It's been like the last 3 seasons where it feels like all the Red Wings are sitting around this, they were going to do this, they're going to do that. And they just never able to pull it off. It's not just this offseason. It feels like it's been forever where the Red Wings are always around, supposedly around a guy.
And I wonder, like, I know from the Minnesota perspective, there was talk that it just seems like a lot of GMs are hesitant to really move anything at this point. So I wonder if Detroit is going to be one of the big players at the trade deadline if they are in it. But here's the problem. You got to be in it to be in position to make really big swings there. It's going to be interesting to see how this gets put together. If you can get steady, solid production from a guy like James Van Riemsdyk in that top 6, that's going to help you tremendously. But as of right now, it feels like a Detroit team that has maybe 5 of 6 top 6 pieces, and they have a bunch of third and fourth line guys. They're probably going to be asked to do a little too much. Are they going to be able to handle that? That'll be the big key.
My big question is the blue line here, because you have Mo Seider, who's great, right?
Mm-hmm.
Won a Norris a few seasons ago. Then it's Edmondson's a young player who's starting to come into his own. But after that, it feels a lot of question marks on the blue line. And again, this is a team that has tried to improve this blue line over the last couple seasons. Of course, apparently they were, last year the big thing is they were going to be the Jacob Trouba sweepstakes, and then Trouba didn't want to go there. I could see them be a team who looks to try to upgrade this blue line sometime during this season, especially, again, if they are a team that is potentially in it at the trade deadline. I could see that being their number one issue, is trying to find a way to upgrade this blue line and get off of guys like Hull and some of these older guys who are not going to be part of the future here soon, but still, again, they have trying to navigate that path of being able to have guys like Sandin Pellikka be able to kind of enter the system here sooner rather than later. So,
yeah, you want to do this too. And I'm not suggesting that Dylan Larkin is even at this point or will be at this point anytime soon. But you want to, for your top players, you want to show them some signs of like, hey, we're making tangible progress here. And maybe it's as simple as now Todd McClellan is at a full off season to really roll up his sleeves and kind of get his hands dirty and try to come at this a different way. But that's another thing too, that I don't know. Like I said, I don't know that you need to like super worry about it at this point, but guys want to win, and you got to figure your captain Dylan Larkin is going to want to be going on some deep postseason runs. He was a fantastic piece of the Four Nations team for the U.S., and that kind of thing, players feed off of that. So if you can put some solid seasons together and get at least closer to a playoff push, that's going to be huge for their process. And this would definitely be the year to do it.
Yeah, I think for Steve Yzerman, it's probably like this feels like a year where you have to make the playoffs, or else there's going to be. It feels like his seat's a little warm to begin with going in this season, and I feel like if the Red Wings aren't in the playoffs, it might be very warm by the end of the season.
We will keep an eye, of course, on Detroit, but we are going to pivot to a team that is no stranger to kind of reinventing ways to stay in the conversation. That, of course, is the Tampa Bay Lightning, who they just keep doing the Lightning thing. And we'll take a look at the likelihood that they are able to make a bit of a statement here in 2025, 2026. That's on the way as we continue today's episode of Locked on NHL after this. Today's episode of Locked On NHL is brought to you by FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. We're getting close to NFL season. One of my favorite things to do is to take a look at the futures odds, whether it be division winners, whether it be conference winners, whether it be Super Bowl champions. You can go that route as well as your standard weekly picks. There's no shortage of options at FanDuel to make the NFL season unforgettable. If you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Welcome back to today's episode of Locked On NHL. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen each and every day. We are your team each and every day as well. JD, the Tampa Bay Lightning coming into this season after a second-place finish in the Atlantic. They did, unfortunately, not end up making any sort of a deep push in the postseason this year. And it's kind of starting to feel like, or at least it was, a Lightning team that maybe is going to need to take a step back before they can take a step forward. And yet, if you look at what the Lightning spent the entirety of the offseason doing, it was anything but that. They retain a large part of their core. They just churn out these potential bottom six moves. And it feels like this is a Lightning team that is just going to gear up and try to do it again. I will say, though, some interesting contracts, to say the least, a la Yanni Gourde with the 6-year, $14 million deal. Although Yanni is definitely he was definitely a vibes guy for those Lightning teams. It's not to say that he didn't contribute on the ice too, but he was definitely a big piece of those Lightning Cup teams. So he's back. Where are you at with Tampa Bay as we get set for the season?
Yeah, this feels like that kind of lurking team, right? And their whole thing is just to, one, just make the playoffs and just be geared up for the playoffs and then kind of see where the chips fall with them. And, right, a team, like you said, they are going to, I think they're that team that they're going to keep trying until the wheels fall off. And they should keep trying until the wheels fall off because of the, the players that you have on this team, right? Like with Kucherov and Braden Point and, all these guys, like as long as they are still on the roster, you keep going as basically until you can't. One of my sneaky favorite, really under the radar signings, I like the Peltier like signing 3 years at basically vet minimum of $775,000. This is one of those moves that we see the Lightning do all the time. You take somebody else's cast off, maybe a guy didn't fit, and you put him in the Lightning system. And would you be surprised if he goes off next year? And then we're all like, wow, how did nobody else sign him for a deal that's more than, like $1 million a year? Like, I have a feeling that's going to be the contract that we look back a year from now and go, wow, that contract's going to work out really great for the Tampa Bay Lightning. But I feel like as a team, though, as like a Lightning, right, you have the Panthers who are kind of taking all the oxygen in Florida. But you still have this core of great players who are still maybe not in their prime and maybe kind of hitting the back nine. But I still feel like this Lightning team is going to be a very good team that is going to be someone we have to take seriously in the playoffs.
And it's an interesting dynamic of the front end of the offense, which is very capable of contending with anybody out there, whether it be Jake Gensel, whether it be Braden Point. Nikita Kucherov just continues to light the world on fire from a points perspective. But Andrei Vasilevsky masks so much of the deficiencies for this team. Not to say that there are a ton, but if you have players that are going into slumps and the offense is hard to come by, he can dial up his play a little bit and he can completely offset that. So not only that, but one of the underrated moves, I think, of last offseason was getting Ryan McDonagh back. And he comes in, he was plus infinity pretty much when he was out there on the ice, but he really helped kind of solidify that decor again. And I think they're hoping that Yanni Gourde can come in and do the same thing. These guys that were previously on the roster just know how to play Tampa Bay Lightning hockey. And so you bring them back in, they can teach some of these other new additions to the roster. And I'm sure we'll discuss it as we move through the rest of the offseason, but Toronto is very definitely going to be playing a little different style next year. There's not going to be as many goals scored for that team. You got the Florida Panthers, who are coming off of their third straight Stanley Cup final appearance, second consecutive Stanley Cup win. There's an opportunity here for Tampa Bay to vault in and take that number one spot in the Atlantic, because Matthew Tkachuk is probably going to be out till at least Christmas. That's big.
It's pretty big.
I did also like what you said about Tampa Bay. Like, they don't really care about the regular season. It's just about getting in position to be ready for the playoffs. They are like, you'll like this analogy, they're like the Golden State Warriors now. They've won a couple of titles. They got a bunch of vets on the roster. They know exactly what they need to do to get ready and when they need to start to kind of fire the jets up.
Yeah. No, I do. Again, like I don't want to harp on the defense here, but you do wonder, like, if they have to deal with some injuries on the defense, it gets really thin really quick on the blue line here for Tampa. Again, like McDonagh, bringing back McDonagh was great. Victor Hedman still, Victor Hedman-esque, like he's still going to continue to be the main focus on that. But, they lost Nick Perbix this offseason, who went to Nashville and went very much an analytics darling type of guy. But I kind of still trust them to self-scout and know, like, hey, we have guys who we feel like can kind of fill the role here. So, but yeah, this is a team. I just think, like, Florida draws so much attention, like you said. Toronto's Toronto. It just feels like a team that's maybe not getting the respect that they potentially deserve heading into this offseason, just because, again, they've had such a quiet offseasons and their core is so set and it's very much just kind of working around the fringes right now. And I still think they're gonna be players this year.
And I will bet with the Lightning until they completely fall apart, and then I will still.
And even then, you're still like, I still believe. I still believe.
You can't fool me that easy. I'm still betting. I'm still going to go with the Lightning, and then they go on a massive losing streak, and that's that. But no, it'll be It's the same old for the Lightning. Is like let's just get
Cam Fowler, and that'll put us over the edge. That's all we need.
Oh, you beat me to it this week. Yes. Very good. Final team that we're going to talk about today, I think just ran into Big Brother last postseason. That being the New Jersey Devils. Can they make the jump? Can they take a step forward this year? We'll talk about it after this. Final segment of today's episode of Locked On NHL. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen each and every day. We are your team each and every day as well. Seth and JD finishing up by talking about the New Jersey Devils. And JD, this Devils team, they were third in the division this past year. They went up against Carolina. It did not look good at all.
Out of gas.
It's a shame because they had a pretty good regular season after just a disastrous year the year before. But it still feels like a roster that I think you can get a little more in some areas. I mean, they obviously have really, really good talent at the top end. You got Jack Hughes, who is on a short list of the best players in the league. In fact, he was in the top 3 in the top 10 under 25 NHL poll that they did as part of Young Players Week last week. You've got Nico Hischier, who is another just extremely talented player. You've got the offense, but I kind of feel like they are a little bit like Carolina in the aspect that you maybe have one or two players that are kind of leading the way. You don't have a third or maybe even a fourth guy that is just like a standout step up. You've got a bunch of really good players, but you don't have like that third, like dynamic elite portion of the lineup.
The Jesper Bratt community is going to be coming for you.
That's fine.
No, but I mean, you do have Timo Meier and you have Jesper Bratt. I think that those are both very good players, right? And I wonder how much, like when this team, after they lost to Carolina, how much did they feel like we just ran out of gas because we didn't have Jack Hughes, who's our best player, and you just kind of go like, we didn't have our best player, right? And not a lot of teams are going to win without their best player, and you wonder if that was probably their thinking. Again, another team who had kind of a little bit of a quiet offseason. If you want to talk about hilarious contracts, signing Jake Allen to 5 years at $1.8 million. Like Jake Allen was kind of the belle of the ball for a lot of teams who are looking to improve their goaltending, or at least their backup goaltender position, or some sort of, if you're going to run the platoon, and decides to come back. Definitely, I don't want to move my stuff type of move there. And good for him. I totally get it. Moving sucks. But like a little bit of a weird contract where it felt like he probably could have gotten more AAV per season for a much shorter time. But I understand, again, for a guy who's 34, you're locked up for the next 5 years. Like you're never having to move your stuff again. So, but yeah, like they went out and they got like Cody Glass to kind of add some oomph to the bottom 6 here. Same thing like Connor Brown's to try to add some oomph. And maybe that's where they felt like they needed, we have such high-end guys with Hughes and Meier and Hischier and all these other guys, but maybe our bottom 6 just wasn't playing up to it. And, we've seen the success that Florida's had, right, where they were just going to bully ball everybody right now. And maybe this was kind of their response, where we feel like to get out of the East, we have to be able to at least put up a fight against or protect our younger players or more skilled players. But my biggest question is, what does this team do on defense because they have so many dudes. Like they have
Yeah.
8 guys. I mean, and then this is right now. Luke Hughes still doesn't have his contract, but Luke Hughes is going to get a massive deal, a very deserving massive deal, as we talked about last week, as we both famously forgot Lane Hudson on our top 10. But Luke Hughes was definitely like a young defenseman worth investing in. You have Seamus Casey and Simone Nemec, who are both young players who need to get some more NHL time, but they're just so locked up with their defense here. And there's whispers that Dougie Hamilton might be available. Like, how does this team try to get ice time for all these defensemen? And that's kind of my big question for this team is if they do want to kind of take that next step is how do you ice your 6 best defensemen?
Yeah, that's going to have to be figured out in training camp because, like you said,
do you trade one to try to help your team elsewhere? Because there's plenty of teams, I think, who would be interested in a guy like Seamus Casey or a guy, like Simone Nemec, who I think could get you a really nice return. And again, we'll see. And maybe Dougie Hamilton's health, where you feel like you're never going to get a full, 82 games, let alone, 70 games out of Dougie Hamilton. Maybe you just need that insurance that if he's not there, you have one of these guys who can kind of step in for you.
Yeah, it's always difficult when you have somebody that's pretty talented defensively, but you run into the problem of, well, how do we cover the 20 games that they don't play? How do we cover the 25 games that they don't play? And at what point is it worth it to just try to more so find somebody that can get you 75 games as opposed to somebody that can get you 60? Like these are the hurdles that are preventing me from being a GM in the NHL, because I just, amongst many other things, like there just are so many gymnastics to try to work out.
Yeah. And like this team too is, they got some cap space. They still have plenty of assets, right? Like this team feels like it's a team that could be very aggressive this trade deadline to try to acquire more talent, because you do have so many pieces that other teams would covet, right? Whether it's first, picks, you have your first and second round pick this year. And for the next 3 seasons, you have players, like I said, young players who I think teams would covet. And as you famously said, right, if they're not helping you win now, like you're in a win now team, and a team like the Devils, where it does feel like it's getting close to, you got to kind of put up or shut up with this core. I think this is going to be a very aggressive team this year in trying to kind of tweak this roster to make sure that they can not only make the playoffs, but have that long postseason run that I think that this team, they've drafted and developed very, very well. Now to start to hopefully see some results from here. So from this team, but yeah, I think though, again, quiet off season, but could be a team that very much one of the big stories of the NHL this year.
And a team that I think is probably breathing a huge sigh of relief too, that they're not having to try to chase the goaltending situation this offseason too. Like they got Jacob Markstrom. He came in and I mean, he was dynamite in the first half of the season. He was solid the whole year, but he ran into some troubles with goal support in the second half. I mean, he was
injuries. Well.
He's 8-1-1 in December alone. Like he is capable of putting up stats amongst the best of them when he's healthy and he's going. And I think, if you would have looked at this Devils team a couple of years ago, you're like, well, we're really going to have to piece this together. Now it's like we got Markstrom. We feel good about Jake Allen as the backup. Like feels like the goaltending position for the first time in a while is pretty well set.
Yeah, it's just, again, it's that health thing with Markstrom, and a guy who has kind of been wearing down a little bit here, especially with all the usage that he's got. So yeah, but if he can stay healthy and they figure out the defense here. Like, I really like the defensive group despite all the names. Like, I really, really like this defensive group from the Devils. You look at a guy like Brendan Dillon, who veteran guy, but like a really solid guy as well. Siegenthaler, like everybody they have like kind of like has a role on this blue line, and they all fill that role really well. And you do have guys where, again, if you lose a guy like Hamilton for a while, you have a guy like Luke Hughes ready to step up, or you have a guy like Simone Nemec who's ready to kind of take that next step. It does. I kind of really like this Devils roster. The more I look at it and study it, it's just health. If you can get 75 games out of Hamilton, and if you can get 50 starts from Markstrom where he's not injured and not kind of battling through injuries, this team has kind of everything you'd want on it. So,
well, we'll see how they fare in the Eastern Conference, as well as all three of the teams that we discussed here today. That is going to do it for today's episode of Locked On NHL. Once again, we thank you for checking out today's episode. We thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen each and every day. Make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. We've got you covered every single Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day.